What up, my fellow Knicks fans? This is your guy Marcellus Ease, and don't panic quite yet. Now, the Knicks are in search of a new president of basketball operations and perhaps even a new head coach. But what's been hindering the franchise these past couple years is their lack of innovation, starting from the front office all the way down to the imagination of the coaching staff. Now, the NBA is called a copycat league. And if you look at teams from the past, the Knicks have actually tried to copy some of these teams. For example, in 2010, they got Mike D'Antoni and they got Amari Stoudemire for free agency to mimic the Steve Nash mid-2000s Phoenix Suns team. And then you can also look at in 2014, they got Phil Jackson to try to implement the triangle offensive system into the Knicks. Would that end up working out for him and Kobe Bryant in 2009 and also in 2010? But by the time Phil Jackson was on the Knicks, a new crop of young talent and a new generation of players came into the league, and the way that the rules were evolving, Phil Jackson's version of the triangle offense was kind of outdated and players did not like it. Now, there's been other innovations throughout the front office in various teams. The Golden State Warriors hiring an agent as a GM and a president. Now, the Knicks are now looking towards hiring Leon Rose. This is another example. And then you could look at teams even like the Dallas Mavericks, how they picked Dirk Nowitzki, and every other team throughout the league since has been trying to find that low-key Euro pick. Now, the Knicks, there's certain rumors that they're trying to find certain head coaches, a couple of guys from the past. You guys check out this segment, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
Chris, my Knicks are a disaster. Do you think they should go after Van Gundy?
Or Thibodeau, you mean?
Or Thibodeau?
Look, both Jeff and Tom are great basketball guys. They both know the game, very well. I covered Jeff when he coached the Knicks before, and he was a very good coach, got them to the NBA Finals. But, look, he's been away from the game 10 years, and I know he's coaching some of the Team
International,
USA,
yes.
international groups. But when I look at Jeff and more so Thibodeau, because there's a track record there, the game has changed now.
It definitely has. The game definitely has changed, and it's also a new generation of players. Now coaches have to actually mask some of their players, particularly the superstars. They have to mask some of their deficiencies. I remember George Karl had said this about Carmelo Anthony back all the way in 2007, I believe, or 2006, how the current day superstar, you could no longer coach him up. You had to basically get other players to hide sort of his deficiencies, and that the superstars kind of had more power than the coaches. It's definitely a different time. And Jeff Van Gundy, he has a nice job at TNT that's way less stressful. He gets to see his family a lot more. He doesn't have to travel as much, more consistent scheduling. I mean, it's going to be very difficult to pull him out of that situation that he's in.
There was a time when I thought Tom Thibodeau was one of the top 3 coaches in the NBA. When he coached Chicago, and their only star was Derrick Rose, and they made the playoffs all 5 of the seasons he was there, and twice they had the best defense in the league. 2 of the other years, they were top 6 defensively in the league. So he was a defensive coach. He goes to Minnesota.
Before he says this, he went to Minnesota, and he's proven that he cannot adapt. He likes that old thing, and he tried to get that old thing back in Minnesota by making them look like the Chicago Bulls. He brought in Jimmy Butler. He sent a lot of picks that they had, a lot of assets that they had. He sent it away. And even to this day, this franchise is basically in re-recovery mode, try to make up for some of Fizdale's mess-ups. And even he could even keep his boy, Jimmy Butler, on the squad. I mean, Thibodeau, he's good, but for today's player, I'm not sure if some of these guys want to be running to the ground, because he does have that reputation where, just like Pat Riley, they run players, basically, they cut their careers 2 or 3 years short.
And they are horrible defensively for his entire tenure there. They're 27th, 25th, and 24th in the league defensively with a great defensive coach. What that tells me, and I know you can blame Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins, they weren't defensive-minded guys.
That tells you right there there's a communication issue between him and the new, younger players of this current generation in the league.
Thibodeau could make anybody a defensive-minded guy when he coached it. And I know they understand how the game's changed, but when Tibbs and Jeff were great defensive coaches, it was pack in the paint and force the teams to shoot the three-pointer and not get shots in the paint.
And you could also back then have muscle men to guys that couldn't even really shoot, they just rebounded and they basically just elbowed the fuck out of some of these guys. Nowadays in the league, most of these guys that are considered big men are finesse guys, and a lot of them are not that good on the defensive end.
Well, that doesn't work nowadays, and I'm not saying
everybody's shooting
Tibbs.
threes.
Right, they want that. I'm not saying Tibbs didn't try to adjust in Minnesota, but obviously it wasn't successful. If they're looking at, I don't think you necessarily have to go back in time in New York to get you a new coach. But if you're looking at a guy with former Knick ties, it should be Mark Jackson. And I believe Mark has been blackballed throughout the league. But
I agree. Mark Jackson would be kind of a good look because he has dealt with younger players of this era. And also, speaking of him being blackballed, some of the religious statements he made, especially against the LGBTQ community, this day and age, and, just overall in entertainment and media, that's a big no-no. So some of his religious views, he's going to have to, kind of clamp down on some of that, especially on a public forum. But other than that, this guy should have been good to go, but it's clearly obvious that there's sort of a shadow ban on this guy right now. He's a little bit too hot because as soon as he comes back too much into the fold, that community will bring up some of the statements that he had made on camera about how he brought up some of his religious beliefs. Kind of, he didn't believe in that type of community because of his religion. So that may be an issue right there. But other than that, this guy, a lot of players respect him. Even players even attended some of his services, as I believe he's a reverend of some sort.
But New York is one place that would definitely accept him. The fans would love him because he was a former player there. He's from New York.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely from NYC. He even went to high school out here in NYC. He went to Bishop Loughlin, I believe. But, yeah, he definitely would be a good figurehead for the fans and the media to talk to, other than, to keep them away from just getting on James Dolan.
And they would give him time, which I think is more important. You look at what he did in Golden State. He was huge for them. I know he didn't get him over the hump like Kerr did, but defensively he created a mindset, and offensively he gave Steph and Klay the confidence, the swagger to believe they could be as great as they became. And so I think Mark Jackson, for a young team, will be a great guy in New York. But I wouldn't personally go with Jeff or Tom.
I agree with this guy right here. He nailed it right on the dot, basically.
Yeah, for me, New York is one of those teams right now where they don't know who they are. They don't know what they want to do. They remind me very, very much so of the Cleveland Browns in the National Football League.
Ooh. Lack of innovation. It all comes down to that. Lack of vision and just lack of innovation. These guys are not thinking outside the box. They're just basically mimicking what other successful teams have done when they thought outside of the box.
Like, you're flip-flopping coaches. Your owner doesn't really know what they want to do. They're at odds with fans and whatever. But to your point, the game has moved beyond these two individuals, Jeff Van Gundy and Tibbs. I live in Minnesota, so I had the opportunity to watch Tibbs up close in person, and it just didn't work. It didn't work because of exactly what you're talking about, the unwillingness to evolve.
And the scary thing is that he was unwilling to evolve, even though he had all the power. He chose the players, and he coached, chose the system. I mean, everything was up to this guy, and he didn't mesh well with the younger players at all.
And when you have that, you can't really be a special coach in leagues you have to evolve. You have to adapt to where the game is and where your players are. And you have to be able to relate. And that's what the Knicks need. I don't know who that coach is specifically. I would love to see Mark Jackson get that opportunity for all the reasons you mentioned. The New York ties, both growing up there and playing there. And then he still understands the game, and I think he can relate to players.
And normally a coach will get confidence like that from usually the upper management above him, like the president of basketball operations and the GM. If these guys are thinking outside the box and trying to innovate, normally that type of energy, it kind of, the coach will end up catching on to some of that, and then he'll try to innovate. The Knicks have to create that sort of culture within the organization, because right now they're just always following some other organization, what they did, or trying to look like how some other team looked like 5 years prior.
But I don't know what the answer is for the Knicks. I don't know if there is a perfect answer for the Knicks, specifically with Daryl Morey still in control.
I know what the answer.
James Dolan.
James Dolan.
I'm sorry.
Shit, it might as well be Del Morey, because him, low-key, man, he's going to turn that Houston franchise to the ground. They're going to have no draft picks, no assets. They're going to have to let James Harden go in order to get some assets. Del Morey, that guy's overrated, man. He'll never win a championship. Not in his system.
I know what isn't the answer. And when I hear Van Gundy and Tibbs, I'm thinking this is a bad rerun episode of Welcome Back, Carter. You know, like seriously, like, why are we going there? You know what I mean?
Yo, he's definitely right, man. I mean, I don't know that show, but I feel him on the sentiment. It's just like, why are we going backwards? And I'm telling you, it's the lack of innovation, man, within the front office. It's just unreal. I mean, definitely, I hope, you guys get hired that are visionaries on and off the court.
Like, this is not what the Knicks need. This is like comfort food. Do you know what I mean? You're like, yeah, where's my mac and cheese? I know what that tastes like, and I can eat this. No! This is why this hasn't worked out for all these years, Chris. You know this. Jeff Van Gundy, when I covered the Knicks, and we both did, Jeff Van Gundy was the assistant coach. I know Jeff forever, for 25 years. I covered Mark Jackson. You brought up Mark Jackson. In college, when he played at St. John's, that's how long I've been around. So I'm with you. I would rather see something like that than to go backwards with these two guys who have been out of it or didn't have the success when he got his second chance. Not a third time. Is Larry Brown not available if you're going that
He's
route?
like 80.
Damn, that Larry Brown situation is even worse. But if you guys can, check out Jeff Van Gundy back when he coached. I mean, this guy looked stressed back then. I mean, I'm not sure he's trying to go back to looking like that again. That job that he has now, more consistent, I just don't see him going back to that. I just don't see the Knicks having an environment where he can just come in and just be comfortable being Jeff and choosing his players and coaching. I don't see that at all.
Rob, it's not just the coaching situation. 6 coaches in 7 years. It's the owner. It starts with Dolan.
We know it's the owner.
Nobody wants to play for him. We know that. Kevin Durant kind of said
Did
a
you see
lot of negative
Did you
stuff.
see what they did to Charles Oakley?
Listen, they do that to Oakley. I mean, it's an embarrassment for 2 decades now. Seriously, since Patrick
Well, that's because the owner has, he needs to expand his search on what kind of team he's assembling together. Maybe he needs to hire an outside consulting firm to help him choose a good management team for the basketball operations side. It's showing just a lack of vision. That's all it is. Once he starts hiring good people, the Knicks will be fine. Most of the owners throughout the NBA, they don't know anything about, just basketball in general. Few owners do. And they're not really involved with the teams like that. I mean, Mark Cuban is the one that kind of set forth the paradigm of just owners being so involved with their teams. But if it wasn't for Mark Cuban, most of these owners, you wouldn't even see them. You wouldn't even know how some of them even look like.
left, this team has been a dumpster fire. Total disaster. I don't know what the answer is. It certainly isn't, gutting the front office and trying to bring in all these outsiders. If you're asking me, as a Knicks fan for 2 decades, I still wear my Patrick Ewing jersey to coach my kids' basketball games. I do that. I honestly would go to the Golden State Warriors and pluck somebody from their front office. They were very forward-thinking over the last 5 or 6 years. Bring in a young guy.
That's not going to work because out in Golden State, if you guys have ever been to the West Coast, people are very forward-thinking in general. It kind of rubs off. Everyone's very progressive. They look towards the future. They try to innovate things. That's a culture thing. You can't just take that culture, especially from that region, and all of a sudden bring it out to Madison Square Garden where a culture like that has never existed. Someone like that would feel suffocated coming from an environment like Golden State and going into an environment like the Knicks where everyone is sort of trying to mimic or copy what someone else has done.
Totally change a culture and try something new.
But this is what happens to teams when you lose over and over and over again, and you're such a storied franchise. Like, you look at the Washington Redskins. I remember them going back to Joe Gibbs.
Look at where they are now.
Look at where they are. They still haven't been able to find that guy that can get them over the hump and get them into the winning ways. The Knicks are going right down that road.
How about the Detroit Lions? That's your hometown team, right?
Like, these teams, they just have a cult.
The main difference is that the Knicks, their location, their real estate, they have access to so many different industries and different minds and different hubs of just innovation that they can pluck some of these people from different type of, different backgrounds. Guys that know basketball, guys that know tech, they can guys that are good at business, they can pluck all these minds together and create a team that can sort of innovate and build on old basketball philosophies, whether on the court or just build on old business philosophies. They have access to all these places like Detroit and Cleveland. They're not in a real estate where they have access to all these types of people. They kind of have to bring them in from other places.
Need to shift in the culture and their thinking moving forward.
One thing I'll say is this, and obviously Steve Mills was, fired as the president, and you got Scott Perry there. One thing they did do, and I know the team is a mess right now, but they've put them in position at least where, like, they got 1- and 2-year deals. So they have a lot of cap room. You got some young players. They got like 7 draft picks over the next few years. They got a lot of draft picks. So if somebody can come in and, get the players there, like, they got the room to go get free agents.
It's not really about that. What they should do now, because of their reputation, they're going to have to spend some time building it back up, and they're going to have to innovate new ways of making that cap space, sort of leveraging that cap space in different ways to get different type of assets, maybe to even trade those to get picks or to get different types of guys. When you look at what the Memphis Grizzlies have done, they've kind of rebuilt their team low key and got rid of, a lot of players that were just eating up cap. And they use some of their cap space to leverage and get draft picks. I mean, look what they did with Andre Iguodala. They basically got a free first-round draft pick, and they got a major asset from Pat Riley and Justice Winslow.
Changed the image.
But wasn't
they brought in a business brand consultant.
God.
But wasn't that
already
Chris
been a
down
little
when
tough.
By the way,
wasn't that Chris?
there's nobody good in free agency available this year. There's nobody.
But
It's
no,
a
but
big
that's
free
what they
agent.
should wait till next year. Don't spend the money now and waste it up.
It's just
Well,
a
who
bad
you getting
situation.
now?
I mean, who have they gotten? They're going to be in the same situation next season and probably most likely this summer also, as far as getting free agents. But like I said, it comes down to innovation. I mean, you could even look at the Toronto Raptors, their coach, Nick Nurse. Sometimes he plays with, 3 power, 3 centers. He plays with 2 point guards, Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet. This guy found ways of just maneuvering and innovating his team and has them playing on a higher level. It depends on the matchup. He switches his lineups. He has guys off the bench playing well. It's all about vision and how comfortable you make it for your coaches to sort of innovate. And it starts with, the front office all the way down to the coaches and even to the players. The Knicks, it's a cultural thing. But the Knicks do have the real estate to find these type of people. They're just going to have to, kind of expand their search as far as the team that they're going to put together to build this. You guys let me know what you think, and you guys stay safe. Peace.